Hi, this is Alexis Cartwright. I've been guided to share a channeling that came through not long ago. It's not just a normal channeling, it's quite huge actually. I believe it was a divine experience. And when this channeling came in, there were many things that were happening just the week prior, before the download came. And it began really a few weeks ago with certain changes and spiritual experiences that have been going on in my life. So it was kind of like a crescendo effect of energy building. And this is what happens when I do really big channelings. Being in the mystery schools began running online at the end of February, early March. So the energy was really running throughout the year with the mystery schools. And it's been really impacting me and supporting me energetically because I've been feeling into the mystery schools as the information and as the graduates participate online from different places in the world. I'm tapping in, or I'm feeling their experiences, and I'm also engaged directly with them at certain times where I do live question and answers and I interact with them at certain points in time. But it's been really interesting because I've been having really profound spiritual experiences, and I knew kind of in a way that would happen because I did explain that when I brought out the channeling for 2026, being the sphere of Giza. It was really important that we kept our mind really in a state of higher consciousness because it was such profound changes of creation and manifestation beginning this year. And I called it the time of no return. And I'll be talking a little bit about that as well. So it was through the mystery schools really that it suspended me in within my higher self and interdimensionally, and enabled me to maintain a really heightened state of vibration and consciousness throughout the whole year. And it's really interesting too because I've actually been feeling the energy of the mystery school rippling down into transference healing. So many of the graduates who have been to the mystery school kind of knew which mystery school was running, and they could relate to why things were happening in their life. But I do believe anybody who listens to my channelings or reads the books that I've written, like the Beyond Always book specifically, or they run or receive the energy, would have been supported by the technology of the grids and the teachings and the energy that was running as the mystery school was streaming online. So I do feel that vibration has really supported me because I am leading up to, as most people know who are involved in TH or listen to my channelings, I am leading up to birthing the Temple of the Holy Spirit in October after the training in September. So, it's like we've just finished Mystery School 4, and we've come into this Chiron and Taurus transit, which I'm going to explain in a minute. And we're moving then through the training into the Temple of the Holy Spirit as we come to the near the end of the year, while this Chiron influence is changing. And I do believe that what's actually happening with this Chiron transit is going to create a huge vibrational shift for everybody to support them in achieving or manifesting what was possible in their new way of being, in their new creative process that I talked about at the beginning of the year in the channeling of the sphere of Giza for 2026. So basically, I just want to say with that particular channeling, what I really emphasise that we were at a point of no return. There was massive astrological events, as we know if you're interested in astrology, that this year is just beyond astrologically really quite life changing. And I did say because of specific astrological alignments, we would have a massive influx of light. We're crystallizing and forming our light body and the subtle system. And that's what I want to talk about, this Chiron in Taurus influence. So Chiron in Taurus, we've been actually sitting for quite a few years in Chiron in Aries. And Chiron in Aries, as it shifts we're moving now and have moved into Chiron and Taurus, which is completely changing on a global level. Everybody, doesn't matter what your Chiron is, will be impacted by this Chiron and Taurus transit. And that's sitting in from June to September this year. But then in September, it's going to shift back into Aries until April next year. So that's only like a 7-month period of time that we'll be sitting in Aries. It will move back into Taurus and stay in Taurus until 2033. So it's kind of like 6 years we'll be sitting in Chiron and Taurus. So what does this mean for us on a personal and global level? Chiron in Taurus compels us to break through so many fears and restrictions around feeling safe, secure, and feeling comfortable in our body and being. So what it brings up and compels us to do is to really change patterning, really on a really core level. So Chiron and Taurus, people who sit with the negative aspects of Chiron and Taurus just can't move. They can't move. They can't break through the fears of feeling secure. So they'll, save and put money in the bank, or they're frightened to spend, to move energy and move money because they're frightened of not feeling secure. And the Chiron in Taurus compels them to show them the way that holding on to things and holding on to material things specifically does not make you feel safe and secure. If anything, what it does, it creates more fear. So what it's compelling us to do, because the world has changed, guys. I said that this year from 2020 to 2029, but 25 to 26, and specific this year, I said the new world has begun, and that's what I want to talk to you about, because the only way that we can rebuild or reconstruct or reevaluate and change the way we live and how we create and what's important to us and where we need to be in that creation process and really, really invest into it. The only influence that's going to help us to break through those fears and bring them up, illuminate and push us through it is the actual Chiron in Taurus. So it's like everybody will have to face their fears. Now, if you're in higher consciousness and you're more fluent with your energy and you're following through, because this is a year of the horse, we had to start this transit and tap into it in Taurus for 3 months. So everybody right now is hanging on a lot to they're too scared to invest in what's important to them, right? They know what they want in their heart. They can feel it. They're feeling compelled to move with a sense of direction or reinvest into something that means something to them. But because they're feeling insecure because of the systems around them breaking down in the world and their job or the world at large, they're really holding on more, or could be holding on more tighter than ever. And that's because the Chiron and Taurus is bringing up that fear. When we're sitting in Chiron and Aries from September to April next year, we're going to have to break down a lot of, we're going to have to utilize our energy and really break through a lot of restrictive patterning and really move with a lot of energy and purpose. And having that horse vibration up until January next year is really going to help us move through the blockages that are coming up. Okay, so it's like we've had a little touch of it for 3 months with Taurus. Aries comes up and just like whatever's inflamed, and needs to really come up and be seen and push through. It's going to really compel us to push through to go back into Taurus again in April, right? Now, there's a lot of visions that I've been having, and I really want to share that with you in this channeling. When we actually started the mystery school in early March, I the war in with the US, Israel, and the Iran had already started, right? But I wasn't attached to it. I was kind of not in that consciousness. And this is what I want to explain to you with these visions I've been having, because basically that's not the world in which you're living in if you're living in the new world. I've been saying for a few years now there's two streams. The old world is breaking down and the new world is birthing. If you're in one stream in the old world, you're living out a parallel reality to those living in the new world. And I want to talk to you, and I've been talking for the last few years now about holographic consciousness. I'm going to explain that more. So what actually happened in March when the mystery school began running, I actually, in the middle of the night, Mother Mary came through and I had a vibration rippling around me, and then I saw these extraterrestrial beings, okay? So to me, they were Orion, and they came in and they said, they saw, I was actually in my light body, in my higher self, looking down on myself the way they were looking at me. And I was actually in the center of a sphere. You could call it an orb or a sphere. I call them holograms, right? That's what sphere consciousness is, holograms. And that's what our causal body is opening up in us. The ability, it's one of our subtle body systems, is the ability to see through and run our consciousness holographically. So what happened was, and that's being orchestrated by the grid and the changes in the grid and the creation of the new world, right? So I was seeing myself in this hologram and looking in on myself through my higher self, my light body, like they were looking at me. And they said, Alexis, this war that started, we knew it was going to happen. And we've been watching everything that's been going on. And I don't get involved with politics, and I don't follow any political leader by any means. But they said, we've been watching Trump, okay? And we've been watching the United States, and we've been watching the Holy Land, and we've been watching this area, and we knew the Holy Land and this particular war was going to take place. And we want you to know that, and you need to tell people that when the time is right. But then they but then they said to me, and you're safe. You're in your hologram, and that holographic world you're in is the new world, and you're safe. And I don't particularly have any fear around nuclear bombs and things like that, but it was interesting they wanted to share that with me, and that's relevant to some information that I want to share in this channeling a little bit later. So that was huge in itself, and they said that more is going to come around that. And we need you to know that we are watching everything that's actually going on. So back to this Chiron in Taurus and what that means in relationship to our consciousness and our reality. Chiron in Taurus means, how are you going to get out of the old world? How are you going to, I've been saying for years, haven't I, since all my yearly channelings, I predicted COVID. I knew COVID was going to end in 2022. I knew that we could never go back to working in the old way. I knew I'd be predicting, if you go back and listen to these channelings and things that I've said, that the world is breaking down. That's these systems, the way that you work, the way that you live, the jobs that you do they're not going to work anymore. So for those people in businesses, I kept saying, we need to look at running your business or your way of working, following your heart and working in the new way. And that's what I've been doing with Transference Healing. We've gone through a huge amount of changes to go online, reinvested into all the investments made to do that, restructured the business, working in the new way, working globally in the new way and expanding, we did not go back and work in the old way, even though we were manifesting, and I was, right? I just knew it was the old way. And this is what I keep saying to everybody: whatever your position is in the world, whether you own your own business or you're working within a business, you will need to work in the new way. The old template doesn't exist anymore. Now, you can't see that even more so now than AI birthing. And it was meant to birth. It's part of the Atlantean aspects of evolving, and it was going to birth, right? So that's where we're seeing more and more in the last 2 years. First, COVID hit and reawakened people to the ability to heal themselves, began breaking down a lot of structures and systems of play, and even in the geopolitical and economic global landscape. That's all going to break down, and that's why you're seeing so much corruption come to light. So many people are tired of inflation. So many people are tired of the system, right? Tired of living in a world that just doesn't work. And the system's still trying to adjust, and they can't control and they can't retemplate because it's going to be a different way, right? Because the old world is breaking down, but you'll sit in it for as long as you try to fit into that system. And that's your Chiron and Taurus. The more you try to save, the more you try to invest in the old system that you think in the old world it used to work, the more you try to rely on the medical system completely, the more you try to live, in a way that you feel secure because you've invested into something that should provide security, but then, earth changes come or economic systems break down, and nothing's reliable in that old world, right? So that's what Chiron and Taurus is beginning to show everyone, that the more you try to live through holding on to money or security or investments or, what seem to be the way to create and manifest and create security and health and healing, just isn't the way to do it, right? So it's going to bring up, first of all, it's going to bring to light on a personal and global scale massive changes within the systems, right? And people are going to go into fear. But if you're living in the new world, you see it for what it is, and you're not holding on because you know that you're going to have the resources that you need because of what you're creating in your way. So you're not sitting on the fence saying, well, I got to save today because I don't have enough money for petrol because this is the way I live and I only get this much a week and I'm not going to spend any money, so I've got more security, because that's actually a false sense of security, because things will change. And if you're not moving to make the changes in the moment to move into the future, you're going to be stuck in the old world. Do you see? So, this is what's actually happening. So we're in the year of Giza, like I said at the beginning of the year. This is the top of the tree of life, meaning everything and anything you need to know and anything and everything that you need comes from beyond your expectation or your conscious, rational perception, that there is an abundance of energy and elements birthing, and this is what I'll explain in this channeling, and there is an abundance of possibilities that you can't even comprehend yet. But if you're in the right hologram, meaning if you're in the right consciousness and you're moving forward and you're taking those leaps of faith, the horse, the Chinese astrology this year, while we move from Chiron and Aries into Chiron and Taurus, back into Chiron and Aries, to enter into Chiron for a 6-year period from April next year. If you're moving with this, you're absorbing these elements that I want to talk about, and the subtle body is birthing, and the grid's changing, your blueprint's changing, you're connecting more to your higher self, and your causal chakra is one aspect of your subtle system. It's coming alive. So your holographic reality, meaning your reality, and the hologram that's created is of the new world. It's really that simple, guys, but it's going to take a huge leap of faith, because people are the more rigid you get and the more in fear you get and the more you don't reevaluate, reinvest and move forward in your new consciousness, because your intuitive mind's going to come more to the forefront. Your consciousness is going to begin to change as your DNA's blueprint's changing. And if you can't move with that healing and change, and that holographic consciousness won't birth, and that hologram of new reality won't come alive, and you won't be able to be in that new world, right? But it will come as if you can move with those intuitive thoughts and work through the fears and reevaluate and move forward. Because even though I've invested a lot and taken huge leaps of faith, I've actually really moved through my fears to do that, because I could have stayed in the old way of working and being. But I've probably spent more in my co-creation process for my reality than ever at this point in time. But the abundance that I'm feeling and the joy and the love and the creation is amplifying because I've done that. And this is what I mean. This is what is going to happen for you. And it could have, some of you are already doing it. But on a global scale, a lot of people are going to go into fear. And it's going to move them beyond that. Okay. I just want to say with the Chiron and Taurus also, what it does, it's going to reconnect us more to the elemental kingdom, because it grounds us into the earth. But I'm talking about not just the earth that we know and the elements that we explore through swimming and, walking or whatever we do through nature and the joy of that. I'm talking about our spiritual connection. Our spirit body is going to connect more to the realm of spirit, and specifically also nature spirits and guides, because the actual alchemy of our planet is changing. There's an alchemical formula birthing as it's purifying our DNA and recoding our DNA through the 5th strand activation for a 1222 strand system, which the body of light is birthing. So what's actually going to happen leading up to, I predicted in the channeling this year to 2033, by then science will know we have a light body system. So in this next 6-year period, science is going to come to see something I've been channeling all my life, and Transference Healing works with, is the light body system, with it, which is the essence of our the technology and essence of our body, right? From the realm, through the realm of spirit. So our light body is crystallining more through light, geometric changes in the grid, in our blueprint, through life, and all this astrological changes and grid changes is enabling us to absorb light, and then interdimensional light, which is higher frequencies of light filtering into our grid and into our DNA as our DNA changes. So we're actually crystallining our light body, which is a 5th dimensional strand of technology running in our system. So this channeling, I'll explain how I saw how the brain, the left and right hemispheres of the brain, and light is going to come weaving down through the central nervous system to our neurons as our DNA decodes and recodes, and then all the light that we need can be absorbed more through the DNA and the neurons, and it's going to crystalline more of this light body. And then science over the next 5 to 6 years will see the light body, and human consciousness will know we are a body of light, that we have a light body. This is something that I've been channeling about, and is the essence of what Transference works with, is helps the body absorb light and for this light body to crystalline. But now when you're receiving, running the energy with the grid changes and the Chiron and Taurus influence to make you look and go with the body and the changes, you're going to be feeling the subtle system birthing more. So you could say what the Chiron and Taurus does on a normal level in the old world, it would compel people to nurture their body, to get alternative healing or massage, or to rely or work with more alternative approaches because of the sensitivity or the fear of health around the body. But now what it's doing, it's actually amplifying the sensitivity of change in us that needs to come about for the birthing of our light body and subtle body system. So it's compelling the human body, the human autonomy of the body, to absorb this light and this prana that's coming through. And that's part of the changes as you move into holographic consciousness and reality, that you'll be filtering that light more into your being, and you'll be co-creating a holographic creative reality through the Chiron and Taurus as that light weaves through your system. So on a negative level, if you're living in the old world, health will become a bigger issue because of genetic clearings that are going on. Even people who think they're healthy, they can manifest something quite quickly, but it can be cleared very quickly as well, because your subtle system is birthing. So it's making us aware and sensitive and open to the realm of spirit more. So people will be connecting, feeling the essence of spirit more within nature, having a creative feeling or intuitive experience through the spirit of nature, and the spirit of the elemental kingdoms, but also the realm of spirit, interdimensional beings and light beings and loved ones that come through as well. But to open ourselves up to being receptive and open to this new light system running and this new holographic reality birthing, we actually have to work through the fear of insecurity and rigidity and our fear of wellness, and going back into the old system of working with our bodies isn't going to work, guys. It doesn't matter how healthy we might feel and look, there will be ripples that will come through, because we need to refine our vibration. We need to enable our intuitive consciousness to birth more, that holographic consciousness to open more. And then as we absorb more pure prana, our oversoul, the other aspect of our light body, will begin to birth. And Mother Mary is supporting that huge process through a whole council of elemental, angelic, and interdimensional beings. There's a whole soul group of beings supporting this process. But this is all part of us crystallining our subtle system and living our fifth dimensional reality, interdimensionality, which I talk about and teach a lot in my writings, channelings, and in the trainings as well, and the energy works with it. So these inner kingdoms are going to come along, and all of the issues around health and the way we look at it, it's not a glamour thing in our body, because Chiron and Taurus can get very attached to the way the body looks and feels, and it's sculptured, but it's about going beyond and not seeing it that way, to see the internal aspects of your inner self and feeling, disregarding how the body's looking in the moment. You're actually moving through stuff and you're absorbing light. So it's moving us beyond our perception of health and what that actually looks like, right? But it will amplify, and people are fear to do that until we can move through it. Some people will get very attached to feeling that they're healthy because of the image around what it looks like and what they need to look like to be healthy, when in fact a ripple of a vibration can come through for light to be absorbed, and that perception around self just doesn't exist anymore, right? So it's making people feel at peace as they connect in to these inner kingdoms and the divine beings, and as they absorb the prosperity and wellness that can come through mastering the Chiron and Taurus, and then just energy just flows. And you're going to find a lot of creation, like in a whole new way as you flow. If we're not flowing with abundance, or we're not, energy and money is just energy, if we're not flowing with that, we're not co-creating. So we can't just sit and in that old way of feeling safe in the world, because the world doesn't exist anymore. So we know now that the subtle body is birthing. So I want to go back to how this stream of channeling came through. About a week and just over a week ago, I had a vision of Mother Mary came through, and she threw these beautiful huge rose petals over my body and being, and I felt them vibrationally move through my whole subtle system and my body and consciousness. And I was suspended in a hologram as that happened. And then she talked about that's when it was after that is when a couple of days after these Orion beings came through and they talked about, how they'd been watching everything that was happening in the States, Israel and Iran, and the whole connection around the fear around nuclear war. So that came through a couple of days after that, and I talked about that in the channeling with the mystery school. And then I understood. Then she said, Alexis, and this is the channeling that I've been giving you up to this point now, that you're in a different hologram, and people need to know that when you're in this different consciousness and your causal chakra comes in more in the subtle system and you're absorbing this more pure prana, you're actually co-creating your new world, and it is of the new world. So the new world exists now. The old world is on its way out. It's a parallel reality that's overlapping but not sustained within the whole co-creative process of the new world. It's almost like it kind of the best way to explain it, the people in the old world are more in an altered state of consciousness and are not stable and are not stabilizing their energies, even though they think they might, because they're in the world of the system, but the system doesn't exist, it's dissolving. You see, so that the new world is really the world that's coexisting now, and the old world is fading away gently as it purifies and as people clear and so forth. So I got that really, really big picture, and it was interesting. After that, I just found out before the full extent of the channeling came through that I'm sharing, that they've just found out in the last few months, and some of you might have heard that there has been files released by the Trump administration again, so Trump comes into the picture again, around the fact that there has been real UFO sightings, and it's been known for quite a few years, since the 60s, or possibly since the 60s. So they've had all these files that have now become declassified, and they involve photos and videos and information. Part of this information comes from military footage, and others comes from sightings. But what the UFO activity is the definite sightings and information on these little, you could call them like little spaceships, they're like little orbs. And they've got a electromagnetic glow of like an orangey reddy kind of glow around them, and they've got an electromagnetic system that runs where they're not restricted to gravity. So as they move through, like I've always seen spheres, right? And they come and go in my consciousness, and they mutate through a cloud or an element, and then they disappear again, and then I get a channeling, and then I connect to the beings in the UFO. But these are actually smaller orbs that can be seen with the naked eye. You don't need to be utilizing your third eye or your telepathic connection and come in and out of consciousness to see them. These are ones that are really solid, right? So there's small kind of orangey reddy orbs, and there's information out about it that they do move, and they can see, they push through gravity, they appear, they disappear very, very quickly, or they turn, they move, and they're gone, right? So these orbs, they know of these orbs. They also, the classified information is that they exist, and they've found that they exist around nuclear plants, and storage units. So I think that's really, really interesting, because this confirms what my channeling that I got in February, right? March. So I went, wow, that's really, really interesting. But they also do what's hasn't been declassified, but has been said by people who have been connected to this information, that these orbs have a electromagnetic kind of glow that kind of reflects a little bit of this through this orange red, this kind of purple pink kind of frequency, but it actually illuminates certain symbols or geometric symbols, or what we would call and they feel connects back to some of the symbolism you see in ancient hieroglyphics. Some of that is around, they've seen in Mayan texts, and some of it in ancient Egyptian. And some of this geometric symbolism we don't understand from a mathematical perspective in science or physics today. So that's I find very, very interesting. There's a reason why I'm sharing that. So that's been really interesting, because that connection came through that hieroglyphics with the channeling that I'm going to share with you in a moment. But it confirmed something that I experienced at the beginning of the year. Okay, so then what happened? I was driving out. So all of this has been happening, right? And about 7 days ago from today, which is Monday the 20th July, when this channeling has come through, I was getting in the car to come out to Garden of Eden, where my sacred sites exist in Australia at Yango, bushland, in Yango bushland. And my car was full of crystals for the Temple of the Holy Spirit that I'm preparing for in October. And so I had all my car full of crystals, and I started driving out. And when I was coming out of Sydney, I just found at the time of day that I was driving in, the light was really impacting my eyes, the sunlight. But what happened, it was like a 2.5, nearly 3 hour drive. I said to Kay when I got to the Garden of Eden, I'd never had so many different rays of light visibly in my eyes the way I had in those 3 hours, but it was also spiritually. So as I was driving out, the sun was burning in my eyes, so I had to keep covering my eyes to see the road periodically. And then as the sun started to set, I saw particular rays of light. And just before I left, actually, I had 2 huge rainbows outside my window. So it already began before I walked out of the apartment, really. And then as the rays of lights kept filtering as there was sun setting, I could really feel it. I could feel it in my being. And then when I finally got to the turn off onto the dirt road, because it's about a 20-minute, 30-minute drive on the dirt road to get down to Garden of Eden, the sun had set. So what happened then, it went from all of these different degrees of light I'm seeing and sensing and feeling to actually driving on the dirt road in this beautiful moonlight. So I got to the property and I went, wow, that was amazing. And then that night is when this channeling came through that I'm sharing with you now. So Mother Mary came back in that night, and she started talking about how light is really being influxed right now. She was talking about that's why, Alexis, that you felt and saw the light. We were trying to get you to open up to this channeling, and there was a definite frequency. So I could hear her voice on a frequency level, a clairaudient level, but there was a vibration. So when you're listening to this, you will absorb that vibration, that frequency, because I'm hitting a frequency and a vibration as I'm talking to you through the channeling. And the information that I'm sharing will open your consciousness up to really moving with this new holographic reality that you're going to start co-creating as you move forward, breaking through the restrictions and embracing the benefits of the Chiron in Taurus. I do want to say, before I tell you this next level of the channeling too, that Chiron in Taurus, the Chiron itself was actually founded in 1977. And it was actually in Chiron in Taurus that we found the actual celestial body. So it's interesting. We were in Chiron and Taurus when we found Chiron, and we're now in Chiron and Taurus as we enter in the new world. And in 1999, there was a Grand Cross in Taurus that I predicted was the change of the old world into the new world from 1999 to 2012, that I wrote the Beyond Doorways book out, brought out all the fundamental teaching, and then the Lightbody teachings all happened through intermediate astrological profound times when Chiron in Taurus has been relevant, or there's been a huge astrological influence of Taurus. So here we are again. It's just another confirmation. So what I did is I saw these pyramids and obelisks, and she talked about the cornerstone of the pyramid from an alchemical perspective. The way that the pyramids were built were established by these huge sockets created in the base of the stone of the pyramid. And the four sides, should I say, of the pyramid base connects to the four cardinal points, north, south, east, west, as we know, but also connects to the four cardinal elements of earth, air, fire, and water. So the cardinal point, really, of a pyramid is the capstone of the pyramid. And it was interesting when Matthew built the pyramid at Garden of Eden, he made the massive, long rods of copper to the perfect proportional height and width. And when he came out after a year of making these long copper rods, he placed them in sandstone blocks at the base, right? And he pulled the rods together at the top, and they came together perfectly at the point. And that is the point symbolized, because our pyramid is geometrically perfect to the cardinal point. So that's why it has that Merkaba technology running. Well, it's the same as the Pyramid of Giza and other pyramids, but specifically I'll be relating back to the Pyramid of Giza. So the cornerstone is actually the capstone. So when these, if it's perfectly proportioned with the cardinal points, it comes together at the top point, which is the capstone of the pyramid. And the capstone of the pyramid aligns directly to the center point of the base of the pyramid itself, in the very center of the stone base of the pyramid itself. The capstone of the pyramid used to be created of the Pyramid of Giza, had a fine white kind of limestone granite, and was completely covered in a gold silver electromagnetic substance. So it created like a glow of light at the top when the sun shone on it, but it also it connected into the electromagnetic spectrum of light, which is, we work with a lot in transference healing. Silver electromagnetic gold, we work with all the time in the procedures and in the Lightbody procedures. So they believe historically that this silver gold substance of electromagnetic substance around that generated from this white kind of stone was to help them connect to the solar sun. But I believe that the geometric properties orchestrated through the pyramid geometry, which creates a Fibonacci kind of effect, of a spiral effect of light and matter, what that did, it helped them connect to an electromagnetic light, which what we see is the Christ light. It's a very high form of technology of light. And it actually orchestrates crystalline structures. So the five platonic solids that create the geometry of the grid, all of this geometric rotational structural formation that creates all life, from the base metals to the base organic matter, is created through this high frequency light that has many spectrums. But this light is the light that I feel that the Egyptians were aware of, the Egyptians that came through from Atlantis and Lemuria. So the capstone that she told me, Alexis, you've channeled all this information around geometry and light body, and had so many experiences, and it's in the energy, and now's the time to understand the big picture. So the diamond pyramid of light, she was saying, Alexis, a transference healing and the mystery schools and the temple of the Holy Spirit and the completion of the diamond pyramid of light is represented by the capstone that you've always said of the pyramid. And the capstone is your knowledge and awareness of a light beyond the light of matter itself, that we know of as solar or stellar or cosmic. All of this light is just a spectrum of a much more high frequency light that Queen Nefertiti and Akhenaten knew of, and ancient hieroglyphics knew of as Aten. Aten is the light of Ra. Ra is God, or God consciousness, or the holographic matrix system of the global grid matrix system of holographic consciousness. And Aten is light or Christ consciousness. Okay, so the capstone of the pyramid of light. So that was massive in that channeling. Then she also showed me the obelisk as well. And she said the formation, as we know in Egyptian mythology, it's one big stone. So the stone is just cut from one big stone, which actually comes from Aswan, which I want to talk about in a moment, which is in the southern part of Egypt going into Africa. Aswan, should I say. But this granite was taken from Aswan, and it was used to create the obelisk stone, okay? But the top of the obelisk stone also has a pyramid structure exactly like the pyramid of Giza and other pyramids, designed with the same metals, the same gold, silver, electromagnetic frequency. So the obelisk was designed to help as symbolism of how we can absorb into our body and being light. So the pyramid of Giza, from an electromagnetic perspective, is symbolizing and helping us understand the absorption of elements and electromagnetic light and pure prana, higher spiritualized prana that are called six-dimensional prana, that is absorbed through the grid, through the elemental energetic plane support. And that absorption is coming through now, and that's changing our whole system and purifying our system. And she says the more you connect in with me, you're learning how to become a vessel body to enable this light, what we call a Holy Spirit, be absorbed into our being as you open your consciousness up and teach this knowledge and wisdom into the world. And the energy you've channeled and is transference healing is to help people in the birthing of the subtle system, which you've been saying all along anyway, but it's becoming more and more obvious now. So the hieroglyphs on the actual obelisk, they not only represent, I believe, stories around pharaohs, kings and queens, or high priests and priestesses in their journey, because they would optimize the chambers, the king and queen's chamber, and the whole geometric matrix system of the pyramid. They would optimize that, knowing that there's archetypal vibrations and frequencies beyond space and time. And through the optimization, the geometric force of the pyramid, their subtle system coming alive through their consciousness expanding and awakening, they would actually go interdimensionally into this light. And that's when they would move into what I see as the Christ realm, or the High Council talks about in the book of Revelation that I'm writing. So what that means is everybody is going to have interdimensional experiences. And that will never change. That's the next step in your evolution in this lifetime and beyond. There's no such a thing in time. So I see people coming back and forth now, learning to where they are millions of years in the future. It's a really big story, but what it actually means is that they were aware, and all the deities like Osiris and Isis and Horus represents the Merkaba. Isis and Osiris represent the death and rebirth, or immortality, the optimization of the subtle system to go interdimensionally. There's no such thing as death or time. You're moving interdimensionally. But through the utilization and the perfection of this system, and I'll tell you what that means in a minute, through the guidance of Mother Mary, with an experience that I had with her. Once you perfect the subtle body system, you move into the realm, what they call the Christ realm of the High Council, written in the book of Revelation, which means that is the point through which you've evolved beyond the limitations of interdimensionality. It's like you're working as a co-creator, and you're part of the divine council of co-creation, and you're absorbing temple life and frequencies and sounds and realities that are so pure and so much part of a bigger picture that you become one with and an instrument with. And I'm not going to go into that too much, but I wanted to share that. She then explained how when she took me to the pyramid, and the perfection symbol is one of the symbols of transference healing. She took me there at that time before I wrote Mr. School 4. I was at the time I was perfecting my Merkaba. I didn't know it then, but that's why now I've been preparing to channel the temple of the Holy Spirit, the vessel of the Holy Spirit, is what I've been attuning to move into my next cycle of evolution. So I got such a huge picture, not only of my evolution, but specifically more, I'm sharing this for this frequency to come out. I got a big picture of the transference healing diamond period of light, and how we, as we move into the new world, we're actually, this energy and technology will amplify and radiate even more technology, energy, because it is of the new world. If you look at the meaning behind Chiron, what came through, if you read it up in the book, and Beyond Doorways, I said that Chiron came through to introduce us to connect to the agreed crystalline technology and new way of healing. Well, that's transference healing, right? So she showed me the really big picture. The last thing that I just want to finish with is just really saying you are a creator. Once you start thinking holographically and moving through the spheres, orchestrated Chiron and Taurus, and moving, utilizing your Chiron influence that you have, plus move through the Chiron and Taurus, you will, and birthing your solar system, you will be living the new world. So if you see anything that makes you dissembling around you, it's meant to. And you've got to keep moving forward with that new co-creative process. Don't sit on the fence in the old way, because you're not going to move the energy. Reinvest in yourself, reinvest in your life, reinvest in your changes. Move with them. Co-create, keep co-creating. Even health and wellness and reality. There's a whole frontier of change and new beginnings and evolution around that. But she did explain to me too that, I want to share this at the very end, all the temples, when I went to Egypt a few years ago, I went into every single temple. They all have in the center of the Holy of Holies section of the temple, right in the center. That center is representative of the corner, the capstone of the pyramid of Giza. That center, the Holy of Holies, is when you stand and you absorb Merkaba, or should I say subtle body technology, represented by the pyramid of Giza. Your system then goes interdimensional. You are then living the divine reality of light. You're entering into temples of learning, experiences and realities of evolution. You're exploring, you're evolving in this world and beyond in every single moment. So as I moved throughout the world and did all the channelings to develop transference healing and all the mysteries in the mystery schools and the teachings, and now moving into my temple of the Holy Spirit, the Holy Spirit is the temple through which I manifest, as I manifest my state of perfection in the subtle system. And then that temple can exist. So you could say the pyramid of Giza is the unification of all the energies that each temple within Egypt radiates. And once you evolve through those temples and access deities or archetypal vibrations and birth a subtle body, the pyramid of Giza is actually a massive Merkaba technology. Your subtle system comes alive to enable you to live interdimensionally without being in the pyramid, and then ultimately birthing your Christ self through that state of evolution and living with that reality by living and moving through the new world. So there's a much bigger, higher message to it all. So I hope you enjoyed this channeling. Let the energy run on a really core level. Embrace the Chiron in Taurus and enjoy the change and co-creation that'll manifest through it. Blessings to you all.